Okay. Awesome. So, like I said, we're going to go ahead and get started, kind of blending the two models of the working genius as well as the laws of teamwork. I really wanted to start off by addressing which kind of law within the law of teamwork we're going to be talking most about and how the working genius fits into that. So we're going to be working from law number 3, the law of the niche. And it just says when all players have a place where they add, the most value. If you were the leader of the free world, how would you decide what job to give each person who's capable of doing any job, including yours? If you wanted everyone to win, you'd use the law of the niche. And they kind of just go in here. And it says there are consequences. And again, consequences don't necessarily mean punishment. It just means unfavorable outcomes, right? It just means there's outcome. The outcome when you place people incorrectly on your team. And I have been extremely guilty of this. Maybe you have been extremely guilty of this. Maybe you have been the person who has been placed incorrectly within the team. And you know, I don't want to say you know the consequence of that, but you know what it feels like to be underutilized or undervalued. Maybe you feel like the position is a little bit out of your realm of expertise. Maybe you felt underqualified or overqualified. You know, let me know in the chat, have you guys ever been in a job where you felt you were not aligned with the position you had? You either felt overqualified, underqualified. You were like, this does not fit my expertise, right? This is just not my zone of genius. It says, what happens to a team when one or more of its players constantly play out of position? It says, first, morale erodes because the team isn't playing up to its fullest capability. And the people become resentful. The people become resentful to their team members without really fully being conscious of it, as well as sorry, there's like this little gnat being attacked by bugs, as well as for the team and the job and or position in general. People become resentful. The people working in an area of weakness resent that their best is untapped, right? And a lot of you guys talked about here, overqualified and not chosen because of clicks. Laura said she's felt both. Whitney said absolutely. So it says, you know, you work in an area of your weakness and you feel like your best is untapped. So they're constantly asking you to do things that the company needs, but not necessarily that you're really good at, not necessarily what you're incredibly gifted in. You might be able to pull it off, but you don't love it. It's not something that comes naturally. You don't enjoy it. You don't receive fulfillment from it. And other people on the team who know that they could better fill a mismatched position on the team resent that their skills are being overlooked. And so that's kind of where you start to get into the teamwork aspect of it is, whatever. If I feel like, I'm just going to pick on people next to me. If I feel like, okay, Autumn, you're going to lead the next Zoom. And Autumn's like, I don't really like leading Zooms, right? But I'm like, you're going to do it. But Mikkel, next door, Mikkel is like, why is Autumn leading Zooms? She doesn't even like leading Zooms. I like leading Zooms. Why isn't Courtney asking me to lead Zooms? And you can see how that can breed resentment, right? It can breed resentment for the position. It can breed resentment for one another. And again, a lot of that happens without people realizing it. A lot of it happens without people understanding that it's happening. Again, because as the leader, you're thinking, I have a position, I have a need, and I'm going to fill it. I'm going to fill it with anybody and everyone or people I think should. Not based on their ability, not based on their desire, not based on their passion, but because I think they should. And then you have other people who want to do it being overlooked. And then it just says, when people are in misplaced positions, the morale of the team erodes because nobody feels they're being properly utilized. Everyone's confidence begins to dwindle and the situation just keeps getting worse. The team stops progressing and the competition takes advantage of the team's obvious weakness. Here, we don't necessarily have competition, but I think what happens is other teams that outperform you or us or whatever become more evident. So I don't necessarily think that we are competing with one another and people look at our weaknesses and go, aha, they suck at this. we can overtake them. That's not, I don't think, what it looks like, but I almost feel like to the people who are constantly working in that weakness and the team morale is eroding. Other teams that are doing perceivably better, that gap becomes bigger and more obvious. So the people that are constantly working in their weakness, right, and they're not playing according to their position, are looking at all these other people like a perfectly well-oiled machine pumping out results, and they're like, what gives? What the heck? Right? So then in here, for those note takers, I'll read this the way he has it written down. And it says, having the right people in the right places is essential to team building. A team's dynamic changes according to the placement of the people. So here's where he makes a list. The wrong person in the wrong place equals regression, meaning whatever skills they had, whatever passion they had, they regress. You grow to fit your environment. So if you have bigger skills and you are in a smaller confined area, you will grow to meet your environment. So if your environment is this big, your skills will regress. Haley, it is not on the YouTube right now. No, ma'am. The wrong person in the right, it will be on YouTube later. The wrong person in the right place equals frustration. So that means, like, if you have the wrong person in a position that you need filled, it creates frustration because they know that they're incapable of doing it, or it's not their genius, right? Like I used earlier when I said, I'm going to make Autumn do this Zoom. And Autumn's like, I don't like public speaking. I don't want to do this. I don't want to whatever, right? Like, but she's in a position that she quote unquote needs to be in. That creates frustration for the person because they're like, I don't want to do this. I don't like it, you know? The right person in the wrong place creates confusion. So a person in, oh yeah, Caitlin, thank you. So the person with a bunch of skills, but they're in the wrong place, they're in the wrong position, they're just confused on what their role is. They're confused on what they're supposed to be doing. They're like, okay, I'm really good at accounting and I'm really good with this, I'm really good with that, but you have me in customer service. What do you want me to do? You want me to talk to the people? Do you want me to analyze the cash? I don't know. You want me, what am I doing here? Right? The right person in the right place creates progression. People move forward. It's like when the cogs finally meet, they're able to move forward and everything turns. The gears are all working together. And then he says, as a whole, right, in relation to teams, the right people in the right places equals multiplication. In our terms here in network marketing, we would call that duplication. So the right people, when you have more than one person in correct places, all doing the things they're supposed to be doing that are aligned with their passion and their purpose and their personality, it just multiplies. It's like if this person's progressing and this person's progressing and this person's progressing, it's hard for the team as a whole not to progress. Does that make sense? So it's really all about making sure you are, first of all, not only that you're placed, because it's not necessarily your uplines or leader's responsibility to place you somewhere. First of all, it kind of goes like this. You have to recognize what your strengths are. You have to recognize what your purpose is, what your passions are, and what kind of is your personality type? What gets the juices flowing for you? Okay. You have to know those things first of all. And you might need to reach out to your person, whoever it is, and be like, hey, I love public speaking. I would love to be on a Zoom. Right? Because your leader's just not going to know that. Right? You could say, I love creating systems. I love Excel spreadsheets. I love this. I love that. I don't know how it could be used on the team, but this is my skill set. Here it is, right? It's kind of like, I don't want to say laying down your offering, but you need to, I used the example the other day with some of the people I was talking to. I said, it's like at a cafeteria, it's like at a big cafeteria table. Everyone can sit down, but this is a potluck, right? I was talking to the leaders. This is a potluck. You need to bring something to the table. Okay. I don't care what it is. Doesn't need to be big, doesn't need to be elaborate, doesn't need to be fancy, but you need to bring something to the table. And all of us do. It's just you need to ask yourself, what do I bring to the table? And the answer to that is whatever you're passionate about and good at. I guarantee no matter how odd you feel like your passion is, or you feel like your purpose is, or what you're really good at, we could probably find a way to make it work here, right? We could probably find a way to do that. So where I'm going to go now is I'm going to go into the working genius model. We're going to talk a little bit about that because this is really helpful. So we've talked a little bit about the color personalities. Does everyone know what I'm talking about when I say that? Red, green, blue, yellow. If you don't, we'll probably touch on it at some point in the near future. So kind of knowing your general color personality, right? Reds are very goal-oriented, a little bit more outspoken. They're driven. Yellows are very nurturing. They're more centered on emotion and feeling. Greens are more logic-based. They like numbers and facts, right? Those are those Excel spreadsheet people, right? The note takers. And then blues love adventure and fun, and they tend to be a little bit more outgoing and adventurous. And so that kind of helps, but also in regards to how we work together, right? We talked about the law of the niche. So we're going to talk about this, and I'm going to list them all off for, again, all of you green people, all of you note takers out there. So the first one, is, and it's funny, they spell out widget. I don't know if they did that on purpose, but that I noticed that it spells out widget. So if you are, sorry, I have to mute somebody. So if you're making a list downward, number one is the genius of wonder. The genius of wonder is the gift of pondering the possibility of greater potential and opportunity in any given situation. These are the people who can look at a situation and ask questions, right? These are the great Albert Einsteins who were like, but why is it the way that it is? Why have we always done that? Why don't we do things differently? Right? So that's kind of the gift of wonder. They do just that. They wonder about lots of things. They like to sit in thought. They're constantly pondering like the greater complexities of not necessarily life, but just certain things, right? Why is that the way that it is? Right? They are more question-oriented people. Then there's the gift or the genius of invention, and the gift of creating original and novel ideas and solutions. So these aren't necessarily the people who ask questions about why something is the way that it is, but they're like, if you come to me with a problem, I want to fix it. I'm going to come up with a solution. I'm going to solve this. I'm going to come up with a system. I'm going to come up with something, right? These are the people who can like take all those ideas and be like, bloop, and create something and make it exist. Then there's the genius of discernment, the gift of intuitively and instinctively evaluating ideas and situations. So these are the people who, once maybe someone asks the question and the inventor then goes, oh, that's a great question. Let me create a solution. Boom, here you go. The discerner will say, let me analyze that. There's something about that solution that doesn't seem quite right. I'm going to figure out what it is. You know, it'd be better if maybe instead of this, we did this. What do you think? Right? They have that kind of ability to discern. They don't want to ask the question. They don't want to invent the solution, but they want to take the pieces that exist and fix it. They want to figure out what it is, right? They don't want to, they look at a blank whiteboard and go, ooh. But if you write a bunch of stuff on the whiteboard, they can go, oh, see, that looks like something's wrong. Maybe we could fix this part, right? They can do this with things, systems, people, teams, whatever. The genius of galvanizing. This is the gift of rallying, inspiring, and organizing others to take action. These are the people who can then say that people asked the question, the inventor created a solution, the discerner refined it, then the galvanizer is going to be like, all right, everybody, these people just came up with this amazing solution. Here's what we're going to do. We're all going to implement it. We're all going to put in our emails. We're all going to do this. This is awesome. Let's go do it. I'm going to create a promo around it because I think it's absolutely genius. Here we go. Right? They rally the troops around specific ideas. They don't want to come up with the ideas. They don't want to refine the ideas, but they'll be like, hell yeah, that's a great idea. And I'm going to make everyone else see it's a great idea too. Then we have the genius of enablement. The genius of enablement is the gift of providing encouragement and assistance for an idea or project. These are the helpers. These are the people who ask the inventor, hey, do you need help with anything? They ask the galvanizer, hey, how can I help? How can I assist? The people with genius of enablement care more about the people than they do the idea. They care more about the people than they do the solution. So whatever it is, they're the helpers, the hand holders, the people who want to assist. And these are very, very important people. When I say it, I know people are kind of like, well, that sounds lame, but we need these kinds of people. Okay. But people with the genius of enablement are the ones who are saying, hey, we have this new system, or we have this new thing that was invented, right? That was put together. I'm going to help you understand how to use it. I'm going to check in with you. we're going to do one-to-ones, and we're going to make sure you really understand this. I'm going to give you a visual so you can help understand it maybe a little bit better, right? Those are the people who carry out the plan. Those are the people who take the system or whatever was invented or whatever was put together, and they carry it out and they help the people do it. And then lastly is the genius of tenacity, the gift of pushing projects or tasks to completion to achieve results. These are the people who say, hey, remember that thing we started like 2 months ago? Why haven't we finished it? Let's finish it. Let's do it. These are the people that like deadlines, and they stick to those deadlines. Without it, or without these people, we wouldn't actually see anything to completion. We would just come up with a bunch of fantastic ideas. We'd rally a bunch of people around it and then never do it. So people who have the genius of tenacity are really, really good at kind of bringing everything full circle. Why it's so important to understand these. And so, well, first of all, we have 3 categories. Is we have 2 working geniuses. We each have 2 working geniuses. We have 2 working competencies. Competencies are areas where we're mostly good at it, but it's not our area of defined strength. And then we have our working frustrations. So there's 2 of those go in each category. So for me, tenacity and enablement are my working frustration. And that means that when I have to help people and handhold people, I get frustrated. When I have to see things through to the end, I get frustrated. Okay. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. They're not weaknesses. Your working frustrations are not weaknesses. It just means that those tasks do not bring you fulfillment. They drain your energy. And your job is to work primarily in your working genius, so you are constantly fueled with energy that's aligned with your passion and purpose. Why? Because when your energy tank is full and you have to work in your working frustration, you're okay with it. So have you guys ever felt like run down, burnt out, or drained before? Just none of you guys, right? Because working here is perfect and we always love it and it's always amazing and it's always easy, right? So chances are, whether it's here or at a regular job or in your family structure, if you're a mom or whatever, when you feel burned out, when you feel like you are at your wit's end, when you feel frustrated a lot, it's probably because you are more so working in your working frustration than your genius. Because here I can tell you this. I know that when I start getting really short and I start getting almost resentful towards either people or the business, when I start getting real spicy with people, or just short time or whatever, I know it's because I have worked too long in my working frustration. I know that I have, yes, spicy. I get spicy. So when I come into chats and Courtney feels ghost pepper spicy, you know she's working way too much in enablement and tenacity, and no bueno, okay? So, and the same thing with Alicia, hers, it's the same, or anything really. I mean, I know Alicia's, one of hers is invention. Her working frustration is invention. If she has to like come up with and invent like a system, she's like, no. I don't like this. I want to do it. Get me away from it. So if you're having to do that, if you're having to be the problem solver, so if, and again, you can probably identify now why there are certain dynamics in the team and why certain people work really well together, because they complement each other, right? So Alicia and I are almost like flipped. Like when I say she's the yin to my yang, that's really true, So she can go do the things that I'm not really good at and don't like. And then I can be like, great, I have all the energy in the world now to invent all the systems and all the solutions and solve all the problems. And then she's like, then we have Tracy, who's like an enabler who can then help people solve those problems. Whereas I'm like, oh no, no thanks, right? And again, I don't mind working in my frustration of enablement and tenacity a little bit, but when I'm doing it too much, they can tell. And now you guys can probably tell. Now you guys will be able to tell. So it's just really important. It creates a self-awareness. So if you're frustrated with where you are right now, I encourage you to look at the law of the niche, right? With this working genius, you're working too much in your area of frustration. And I encourage you to figure out exactly what your working genius is by scrolling up and taking that assessment, because it really also gives you, it's like a full-blown assessment that tells you what your working genius is, competency, and frustration. And then it gives you like certain tasks. It gives you things that you should be doing, things that you're aligned with, things that you're not. It gives you like a full breakdown. But this just helps you understand yourself better as a cog in this machine. Because if you are a cog that's meant to go over here and spin the minute hand, but you're having to work over here on the second hand, your gear's not going to fit, and you're trying to like force it and make it fit, and you're like, the heck, this is stupid. Whitney, if you scroll up a little bit, you should be able to see it. If you scroll all the way up, it should be there. If you can't scroll all the way up, let me know. And so it's really important for you guys to understand that. It creates a greater self-awareness, so you know to work your tasks and work your business primarily in your working genius, so that you kind of fill up your bank, your energy bank, if you will, for when you have to work in your working frustration. Another piece to that is identifying other people's working genius. Okay, wait, I don't, you might have come in after. I'll do it in the chat a little bit. Is you need to understand other people's working genius. So you can either give them this assessment, right? You can either give them this assessment to take so that you know exactly what their working genius is, or you can just kind of get to know them, asking them questions about these things, about tenacity, about wonder, about all this stuff, right? And it will help you place them accordingly. When you properly place people on your team changes. Why? Because everybody feels valuable. Not only does everybody feel valuable, they feel good, because they're working, doing the things that they love and are naturally gifted in. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be forcing ourselves to grow a little bit, but you shouldn't be living in that area where you're forcing yourself to grow in these working frustrations. That's why I hate that. I love that they don't call them weaknesses. They're frustrations. And you shouldn't constantly be having to, you can't make everything a working genius. And I think when we say, oh, you need to work on that, we almost make it seem like every one of those should be a working genius for you. And that's just not the case. That's not realistic. So work as often as you can in that area of genius for you. So when you do have to, operate in that mode of frustration, it's okay. It doesn't feel as frustrating. You're like, okay, I have the kind of extra energy, if you will, to help people, to walk people through, to do this, to do that. I have more energy to, see this project through to the end because I know this person can't anymore because they're kind of checked out, but that's okay. I've been working in my zone of genius for long enough that I've stored up this energy that I feel like I could do that. But when you're having to do every single thing all the time because you think you have to be perfect at all of it, you're going to exhaust yourself. You're going to burn out. You're going to always feel like you're falling short and like nothing is ever good enough. And eventually you will stop. Whatever it is, you will stop. And so I encourage you guys, again, to get better at identifying these things for yourself, number one. But number two is identifying them in other people. I want you to look at your team right now and just kind of go through and figure out what people are really good at, what they're naturally gifted in. And then I want you to give them tasks. I want you to give them positions in your team, in your organization, and saying, you are so good at this. Can you do that? You're so gifted in this area. I would love it if you did X, Y, Z. When you have people doing that, you will now have people volunteering to help you do things. You will have people who say, wow, I'm really good at this. I want to do X, Y, and Z. When I started doing this, I had more people volunteering to host Zooms that we actually had to stop because we would have had 40 Zooms a week. And, just certain things. And when that happens, you create more of a fulfilling work environment because people feel seen and they feel heard, and it's not as exhausting. So I think that really helps to play into that zone of genius. So that happened the other day. An example of it the other day, Carly was asking for a graphic, and Haley said, I can, right? And she totally could have. But I said, hey, you know what? That's totally Mikkel's working genius. Like, she actually derives joy from it. She loves it. And when someone literally derives joy and fulfillment from something like that, now Mikkel likes to work out, but I'm not going to have Mikkel lead a workout Zoom. That's something I would ask Haley to do, because that stuff fills her more. It doesn't mean that, Mikkel's not good at working out. It doesn't mean Mikkel's bad at that stuff. She's like, well, I don't know about that. It just means that stuff doesn't bring her fulfillment. I had to talk with Tracy the other day about coaching and courses and all this other stuff. And I said, I know all about social media. I know all about the algorithms, and I know all about that stuff, but I'm not passionate about it. I don't want to teach a whole course on it. I could easily teach a whole course on it, but I'd be like, okay, open your Facebook. Now do this. Make sure your profile picture has a solid background. Blah, blah, blah. I don't love it. Tracy could eat it for breakfast. She loves it. She gets so much joy out of that, but I don't. Leadership now is my jam. I could talk about leadership and mindset and all that stuff all day. That stuff brings me fulfillment. Okay. So not only, again, I think just to end it, because I want to really drive it home, because this is, when we had to talk about this the other day in our leadership chat, this is one of the biggest turning points in my business personally with the team, is when I started recognizing what people were good at and passionate about and asking them what they brought to the table, and then said, great, I'm going to place them in this position. I'm going to place them here. And then if I didn't have a place for them, I said, how can I create something for them? How can I create a home for them, a nest where they can just live out their awesomeness and do all the things they're really good at? And when you do that, other people who kind of are like looking at the table, like they might not be sitting down because they're like, I mean, I don't want to bring macaroni because Autumn already brought macaroni. You know, they're like, it's a potluck. They're like, well, I can't bring what she already brought. Well, that's the only thing I know how to make, you know, and they're like, ugh. And they're just looking. When you place people accordingly, and then when you find someone who has a unique set of skills or passions and you create a space for them to excel, you then give permission for everybody else who's watching to make whatever the heck they want and say, hey, this is what I offer, knowing that whatever they offer, a space will be created for them. And then everybody enjoys sitting down. And that is how you create a really good, well-functioning team. Because if not, you're just kind of standing around and I hear this all the time, they have such great potential. They could be such a great leader. They could be such a great promoter, right? I hear this from you guys all the time. But it's really all about tapping into what they are passionate about and having them walk as often in that as possible. When you do that and you give them permission to walk in their working genius, you then have more clout to say, hey, I know this really isn't a genius for you, an area of genius for you, but we need to do this. They're more likely to be like, sure, absolutely. As opposed to, the team I had not even a year and a half ago, that's what I was doing all the time. I'd be like, well, we have this spot that needs to be filled. So I guess you're going to go do that. It's just that it was like, I don't care that you don't love to do it. You need to learn how to do it. I mean, there's some truth to that, right? You can't just be like, this is Courtney telling me I never have to lead a Zoom. I never have to do an RCM. I never have to go live. That's not what I'm telling you. Okay. I'll need to put that out there right now. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is if you do a Zoom, if you do a live, if you do RCMs, do them so they align with your area of genius. Do them so they bring you joy and fulfillment. I don't care if it's going live about how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. If you were like, I love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, then by golly, talk about how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, okay? Just go live and talk about it. That is how you are going to have way more buy-in and longevity with your team. Because someone who feels valued on a team is less likely to just up and go. When they bring something to the table and they sit down at the table and they become part of the table, it's harder for them to get up and walk away from the table. But if you have people kind of standing around, they know that they can just kind of like in the shadows and disappear and no one will see them. They're like, again, they don't have that buy-in. They don't feel like their value is seen. So they're more likely to just kind of bounce. They're like, nah, I'm out of here. Like, I'm sure some of my leaders who have been with me for a while have thought about leaving a multitude of times, but they're like, I'm already in this knee deep. I'm stuck like Chuck. I'm going to make it work. And sometimes that's necessary, right? It's just like in a relationship, when you're married, you're kind of like, well, we got to figure it out. And then guess what? You figure it out. Right? So I hope you guys found that helpful. I know we didn't go so super in depth with either of those, but I think a lot of it is really just you kind of taking the assessment for yourself, really looking at the people on your team and figuring out what they're really good at, what they don't love to do, what brings them a lot of frustration, and then trying to place them accordingly on your team. If you're like, well, I can't place people, right? And I don't mean like waiting room stuff. I mean, that's a different conversation. But in general, when it comes to like, okay, I've got 6 people on my team, I want to have a team Zoom. Okay, well, you may not want to be the person talking on the team Zoom every single week. And maybe you want to teach all these other people how to be leaders and speak on Zoom, but maybe you say like, wow, Mandy, you are so good at like planning and organizing. That is like such a major weakness of mine. Would you mind hosting a Zoom on how to fill out a planner? She'd be like, absolutely. I love that. I love planning, right? And if I was just like, wow, Casey, you're so good. Like, I know that you love like meditation and mindset and all of that. Would you mind hosting a Zoom on that? Like, it just seems like that's something you're really good and passionate about. It's not a strength of mine. Would you mind leading a Zoom on that? That's kind of what I mean. Learn what they're good at, what they're passionate about. And you can just say, hey, because when you do that, what you're really saying is, hey, I see your value. I see what you bring to the table. Can you share that with everybody? They're going to be like, wow, me? You see my value? Okay. Right? And then they show up differently, you know? And I guarantee you're going to see a lot more buy-in on your team. You're going to see a lot more people volunteering. You're not going to feel like you're bearing all the weight all the time. And if you're like, I don't have a team, guess what? This helps you recruit people. So I have something outside of Lavelle that I do as far as coaching and having like a consultancy and coaching stuff. And with the team that I've built over there, we literally did this Working Genius. And I said, you know why we work so good together? We literally have one of everything. In this little core team, we have all the working geniuses right here. And that's like, that makes sense. So you can say like, wow, we're a team full of enablers. We don't have any wanderers. We don't have any inventors or anybody with tenacity. We need to recruit some people like that. So you might find, and I had this conversation with Tracy the other day. She's like, oh my gosh, my team is full of people who were just, their genius is all enablement, which totally makes sense because my chat is filled with nothing but them helping people, helping one another. But we never get anything done. Because no one has tenacity, not like as a characteristic, but as a working genius. No one's got tenacity. No one asks questions. No one's a wanderer. And because no one's a wanderer, no one's inventing anything. No one's creating solutions. Everyone's just wandering around helping each other, So it's great. And it's such a great gift, but it really helped her understand how to diversify the people she was recruiting, if that makes sense. She's like, wow, if I'm going to make this teamwork, I need to recruit some people who, are a little bit more gifted in this area, and this area to help round out the effectiveness of the team. So, I see lots of questions about sending the link again. I will go ahead and put that in the Thrive Army the Thrive Army chat. So that people can take it. I hope everybody takes it, but I also hope that as you keep this link, because as you start building a team, it'll be super helpful to have them take over time, and really help you kind of step back and evaluate your team, especially if you feel frustrated with the team right now, and not frustrated with the people, but frustrated with the lack of effectiveness or frustrated with the lack of forward momentum. You may need to take a step back, have people take this assessment, and then look and go, oh, well, this makes sense. It may make sense because you might have a Tracy situation where you feel like you're really lopsided with one genius and lacking a lot of others. Or you might find that you're really well-rounded, but no one is placed accordingly. No one's gifts are being utilized. Both of those are very easy solutions. And so I guarantee that will solve a lot of the problems. And I think if we're talking, or if we're going back to last week's discussion about the weakest link, right, the law of the chain, and it comes to having higher caliber people, this is going to help. Because when you recruit intentionally and when you are mindfully selecting people that you want to work with, have the working genius model in mind, So, as soon as you recruit someone, you're like, where do they go? Because I think what we do right now is we take whoever and they go in like this holding pen. And then they just all coexist. But what we need to do immediately is, as soon as they're quote unquote hired, right? It's almost kind of, can you imagine going to a job and you're hired, but you don't know what for? And you find out later what you were hired for because they just put you there. You're like, you're hired. And then you all just kind of go sit in this room. No, as soon as you're hired, you go bloop in your job, in your position. And so you need to be thinking of that when you're recruiting people and you have this working genius model in mind and you know what their niche is and their genius is. You can say, awesome, you fit here. You fit with the trainers. You fit with the program creators. You fit with the, people who answer questions. Again, you can create stuff. You can, if people are like, I don't like doing Zooms, I don't like doing, you can have literally designated question answerers in your chat. If they're the people who love to answer questions and love to help people and love to be in the chat, make that their job, right? Because if you're like, I'll be damned if I have to answer another question in this chat, right? If that's not your zone of genius, but someone else is always like, blah, 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 they're the first person to help, you can be like, hey, I notice you seem really good at that. Does that bring you fulfillment? If they're like, yeah, I'd be like, you know what? I was actually thinking of having a designated question answerer. Would you be one of them? They'd probably be like, yes, I would love that. Right? I'm sure as I say that, some people are like, oh, that wasn't a job offer. Oh, I like that though. Right? So as soon as you are recruiting people, you need to place them accordingly. You need to be like, I know where you are going to go. I know where you are going to add the most value. Because then they fit in right from the beginning. You're like, hey, I had a seat saved right here for you. Sit down, brother. Right? Sit down, sis. Here we go. And it's just so much more effective. Everybody will love what they do. And it won't feel like you are pulling teeth to show up. I think a lot of us feel that frustration right now where with a lot of people, we're feeling like we're showing up more for them than they are for themselves. We're feeling like we're inviting them to the table more often than they actually take a seat, right? We're like, come on, sit down. They're like, well, I don't know. You spend more time inviting them than you do eating, than you do socializing with the people at the table who are there. So again, when we talked about last week, like with the law of the chain is like letting those people go. Because if the table is filled with individuals who didn't bring anything for the potluck, you have a lot of hungry people and not a lot of food. So you need to clear room and be like, maybe this isn't the table for you. For other people who are sitting there with food, like, where do I put this? Where do I go? Looking at people and be like, hey, gats to move. Okay, there's really nothing wrong with that. There's really nothing wrong with asking people, what do you bring to the table? What value do you bring? And it's not to serve a selfish purpose for you. It's so you can know how to best utilize their strengths. And then if you have people who are like, I don't really know what I'm good at, it is not your job to figure it out for them. It is not your job to figure out what they are good at. Right? If they're like, oh, I'll come, but I don't really know what to bring. I'm like, okay, well, when you figure out what to bring it. I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, you could bring pizza. Do you like pizza? Like, no, I really like pizza. No. I'm not wasting time with that. You shouldn't either. And it's all kind of the same. When you do this, you will build a much more efficient, strong, happy team that wants to show up, that's begging for things to do, that works more efficiently. I'm not going to say never gets burnt out, but you're burnt out less because you enjoy it more. And then everybody, because it's working more efficiently and you're creating momentum, as you'll learn here in one of the things, the law of morale, a winning team never gets hurt. So that's one way to create really powerful momentum. And I've seen it work firsthand in our team, in my team, people I've recruited, the leaders we've built, what they do. Like I can look at it and go, ooh, this works. It works big time. So I encourage you guys to take this assessment, look at it, get to know the genius models really, really well, and utilize them when you're recruiting people, when you're talking to people, when you're engaging on your team, so you know how to use them best. But I will go ahead. I'll let you guys go for the evening. Have a good night with your family. We will catch you tomorrow evening on mindset and inspiration. Bye, guys.